Hey there, time travelers! Ready for another nostalgia trip back to the past? Hop in, because in today's video, we're traveling back to a time when everyone was jamming out to their hit clip and hoping that their personal hand mirrors could turn into communication devices. Totally Spies was an animated TV show that made everyone want to become a super spy and have access to all of the cool gadgets that Sam, Alex, and Clover had access to. But did you know that when we weren't focusing on them fighting crime, we might all have been subjected to something much dirtier than we expected? Today we're going to be talking about the show Totally Spies and the fact that looking back at it as adults has fans wondering if there wasn't something seriously off about that show. Be sure to stick around till the end of the video to find out whether or not we think Totally Spies was more than just a kids show. Now, when I first heard this theory, I have to admit, I was in denial. Honestly, I still might be. To think of a show that I grew up with as possibly being fetish fuel is a thought that I would never have considered. And I'm typically one to enjoy dark theories, but this one is just insane. But that's mostly because of how oddly accurate the idea of Totally Spies being more than just a children's action spy cartoon and having a side of it that was definitely geared toward adults. From shrinking clothes to more bondage than you could ever imagine, Totally Spies apparently had it all, and we were just too young to realize what we had been watching. As an adult though, it's almost painfully obvious, and a lot of older fans of the show would agree. In order to understand all of the motives behind the show though, we have to take a look at its creation and the minds responsible for bringing the show to life. Totally Spies aired on Freeform, which at the time was called ABC Family, with the first episode hitting home televisions on November 3rd, 2001. The show was created by two men named Vincent Chavlon Demersay and David Michel, who had a very different idea for the show than the one that we ended up with. Before it was Totally Spies, the series was originally intended to be focused on three teen girls who were all part of a girl band. Actually, the original idea for the show was to create a real-life girl band and have the characters in the show be based on them and their exploits in order to promote the band. This, of course, all changed by the time Totally Spies actually hit the airwaves, with the concept for the show being changed entirely. When he was asked about how they came up with the idea for the show, David Michel told an interviewer that he noticed a lack of diversity when it came to the action cartoons on TV at the time. All the ones that were airing before Totally Spies appeared to be catering to a male audience, and there was a serious void of action shows with female leads that were intended to pull in an audience of young women and girls. So he decided to almost combine the idea of an action show geared toward a female audience with the idea of it starring a Spice Girls, Britney Spears-inspired group of teenage girls. It was then that David and Vincent apparently came up with the concept for a show that was very similar to popular movies like Charlie's Angels or Clueless, and thus Totally Spies was born. The show ended up starring Alex, Clover, and Sam, three teens from Beverly Hills, California, who ended up working as undercover super spies for the company known as the World Organization of Human Protection, or WHOOP. Much like Charlie's Angels, the three spies all answer the call of a single person, only instead of being named Charlie, the spies leader is a man named Jerry, who frankly looks like a butler. Each episode of the series typically sees the spies taking on villains who, for some reason or another, feel the need to exact their revenge on the planet. In order to face the evil foes, Sam, Clover, and Alex were all constantly equipped with insanely powerful gadgets and tech that allowed them to infiltrate or escape any area or situation to complete their mission. On the surface, it was a truly epic show that I loved to watch whenever it came on. Now, it shouldn't come as a surprise that this wasn't the first show that any of the writers had worked on, and after taking a look at their resumes, you'll understand why this show got so popular. When you take a look at some of the head writers for the show, like Michelle Lamoureux and Robert Lamoureux, you might recognize some of their previous work on massively popular shows like Hey Arnold and Rocket Power. Those were two of my favorite shows growing up, so it's no wonder that Totally Spies seemed to be well written. When you take the show for what it is, it doesn't appear to be too dirty or deviant like the theory suggests. However, once you consider all of the popular tropes that keep appearing throughout the series, it's kinda hard to deny that Totally Spies may have been dirty than we originally believed, and the creators might have had an ulterior motive creating the show in the first place. Next, we need to take a look at the country that created the show, Canada. Totally Spies is a Canadian and French show, and while I'm not saying that all Canadian cartoons are inappropriate, it's hard to deny that they are a bit looser on their screens than the cartoons in the US and other parts of the world. For instance, in Total Drama Island, a Canadian cartoon that aired on Cartoon Network toward the mid-2000s, there was a scene during the competition where one of the female characters got her shirt caught on a tree branch and it got torn off. The animators of the show obviously censored the character's torso, but many parents freaked out at the fact that this was a TV show geared towards children. On top of that, one of the more popular broadcasting networks in Canada, Teletoons, has been known to show some fairly inappropriate content on some of the shows that have aired on that channel, which is also aimed toward children. Now, Totally Spies was never actually a part of Teletoons, but some of the writers have worked on Teletoons projects in the past, and considering Canadian television seems to be a bit looser with its censorship, it makes sense that Totally Spies is a bit more adult than other animated shows in the US. And this isn't me saying that shows made in the United States are never inappropriate. I mean, I think we're seeing that children's cartoons can get away with more now than they ever could. You have characters like Mordecai from the regular show saying words like piss and have baby pizzas dying on screen in The Amazing World of Gumball. But back in the early 2000s, you had to be more subtle with the dirty jokes or innuendos when you were on TV. That was a memo that Totally Spies totally didn't get. And considering how well the show did, either people simply didn't mind all of the constant dirty tropes that kept popping up, or they didn't notice it. But now that we're all older, we're able to pick up on all the subtle jokes and clues. So much so that some fans are having a hard time wondering if the creators of the show actually have some of these fetishes for themselves. And that's the reason why they kept putting them into the show. I mean, there's almost always some sort of bondage scene in every episode. And while it would be easy to write it off as, it's a spy show, they're bound to be captured and tied up every now and then, some are saying that the writers themselves most likely have a thing for that particular action. Totally Spies ended up being a show that ran for 6 seasons, and even got a prequel film that was released between the 5th and 6th seasons. And if you've ever watched the show, Community, you'll know that Totally Spies fits Abed's formula for a perfect series. 6 seasons and a movie. It's speculated that the anime-inspired animation style played a factor in the show's popularity, but it's unclear if that's actually true or not. Some who have gone back and watched Totally Spies, now that they're adults, can't help but wonder if an entire generation was influenced into developing certain tendencies by a single TV show. And to that, I say, probably not. We mentioned before that almost every episode of the animated spy series included a scene that some might have considered to be bondage, while other episodes had weird focuses on the characters' feet and toes. On top of that, there were episodes that included the characters transforming into humanoid-like animals, or there was this one time that the girls were shot with a beam that literally made their clothes shrink to expose a lot of skin. But is it likely that Totally Spies was a fetish fuel like some fans think so? Not really. Sure, I can see how it might look that way, and I can definitely see where the origin of this theory is coming from, but honestly, I think that it's just people digging too deep into nothing. To me, Totally Spies was just an action-packed show that was based on the popular Charlie's Angels style of storytelling, and to think of it as anything else is up to the individual. The real question here is, what do you think? Was Totally Spies simply fetish fuel, or was it just a children's action cartoon that happened to include scenes that we, as jaded adults, can't help but see something inappropriate in? Be sure to let us know in the comments below. We love to hear from you all. That's all for today. Remember, if you enjoyed today's nostalgic conspiracy, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel to make sure you don't miss the chance to travel back through time.